Good morning, all, or happy lunchtime for my friends in South Downs, or if you're watching from Lowcock, I guess I'm sorry it's Monday. And welcome to Kal-bardr's Corner for this episode of Coffee with Cal. I am Baron Kal-bardr Gellir, Companion of the Meridian Cross, Companion of the Argent Comet, Companion of the Compostela, and Reaper, coming to you live from the Barony of the Osprey on the southern coast of Meridies. Now, for this episode, I am joined by a soon-to-be Master of the Magical Arts, one of my newest friends from my trip to Artemesia, the Honorable Lord Aslak the Awful, patents pending. Good morning, your lordship. Hey, you're muted. There we go.
I knew that.
Never fails. Mute will get you.
Good morning.
Good morning. So before we get started, if you will, tell us a little bit about you, who you are, and why you are awesome.
So I'm Aslak the Awful out of Artemesia, kind of right in the dead smack middle of Artemesia. And I'm Sun and Golden Splendor, Order of the Key Cross, which is service and arts. So my main art is magic, as you heard. I'm the first Kingdom Bard to use magic to win the Kingdom Bard, and the kind of the first forefront of the magic wave that's hitting Artemesia.
That's accurate from what I've seen and heard. So, all right. Well, welcome to the show, man. I would appreciate you coming out and coming out. Sitting on your couch, I guess. But I'm excited to have some new folks out here, and I was just grateful to meet you. And the event you ran was amazing, and it was a awesome time. So I'm glad to have you on.
Thanks. Glad you enjoyed it.
So. All right, so before we get going into the topic, we, of course, have to talk about our beans because this show is coffee-themed. So today, as previously mentioned, yes, I am that basic. I am drinking the limited edition spiced pumpkin pecan pie, yes, pecan pie, from Community Coffee. And, of course, out of my Feed the Ravens mug from my Westie Besties. So there you go. What about you, Aslak? What you got?
I have Highlander Grog, which is a custom coffee from our local coffee shop, Cafe Ibis. Comes out of Peru. Kind of has a vanilla caramel whiskey flavor to it. It's just really good stuff. It's fair traded, so it's something I really enjoy having. So Cafe Ibis. Good choice.
And supporting local vendors. Appreciate you for that. So you said Highlander Grog, and I was like, oh, yeah, I know that coffee, but apparently Highlander Grog is a flavor that's across multiple vendors because Odyssey Coffee down here in, I say down here, they're technically over in Glob, and they have a Highlander Grog as well, a local SCA vendor. So one of my favorites they produce, actually. So there you go. All right. And, of course, welcome to all our viewers out there watching. Please, if you're watching, let us know you're there in the comments, who you are, where you're from. If you have any questions throughout the show, either for myself or for my guests, please drop them in there. We'll address them as we have time. We'll take anything from utterly ridiculous to on topic. I'm okay. We'll take them. We'll see what happens. So, all right. So diving into today's topic, holy crap, we have magicians in the SCA. I never knew this. So I'm a huge Magic fan. I say, don't ask me historical questions. I know nothing about history. Like I can name a few people from history. But I watch Penn and Teller all the time. I'm crap at Magic. I've tried it. My hands don't want to work right, and I've been told you should practice more, and they're probably correct. I don't have the patience for it. But I love watching Magic. I love dissecting. I love breaking things apart and sort of seeing how things work and going, oh, I saw that thing or whatever. And I think it's a fun thing for my brain. And I never considered it from an SCA standpoint, right? It's a bardic art, sure. I fully agree with that. But it's so antithetical to what I've seen in the SCA, at least here in Meridies. Now, the funny part is, I meet you. I'm like, oh, cool, magicians, that's a thing, neat, and just sort of put it out of my brain. And then I go to a class based out of Atlantia, or it was Pan-Asian Atlantia, like Pan-Asian University thing that they did, based out of Ethelmark. And there was a magician teaching a class on magic from Meridies, and I was like, what? How did I miss this? So he's actually Kuji, super cool guy. He's based out of northern Alabama right now. So I was like, okay, clearly there's magicians in the SCA. This is Aslak is not the only one now. I've now seen others. So that's actually the day I reached out to you. I was like, hey, I want to do this show because this is now a thing I've seen twice. It's clearly a thing we need to talk about. So So I guess I want to start with, tell me how you got started in Magic, and then sort of how you brought that to the SCA, and sort of where you came from on that. And we'll start there.
So like most kids, I started Magic when I was, 12, and then dropped it until I got older. And it was probably 12, 13 years ago. I can't even tell you what sparked it. I just thought, I'd always kind of maintained a couple of card tricks that I could do. Pretty simple stuff. But I was like, I kind of want to get back into this. And it turns out that one of the top magicians in the world lives in my little tiny town of Logan, Utah. At least one of the top magician historians. So I met up with him and started taking lessons, and that's what kind of launched it. So about 12, 13 years ago. And then about that time, I joined SCA in 92 and got, suit of armor. My friend that I palled around high school, his dad was into it. Kind of messed around with it for a few years, the SCA, and then dropped out and dropped back in and dropped back out. And about the same time I was picking up Magic, I kind of wandered back into the SCA again about 12 years ago. Well, I'd finally put together my full suited kit. Most people in the kingdom in my kingdom don't know that I was a fighter to begin with. I just didn't fight SCA. I fought just about everything else. But I finally got my full kit together, and then tragedy struck, and I now have a pacemaker. And that's a bad idea to be fighting when one blow in the wrong spot turns your heart off.
Yeah.
And so now I was like, well, now I'm going to drop back out of the SCA. There's no reason for me to be here. But, some people kind of liked my Magic thing. And I thought, well, is it historical? And that's when the research started. And the deeper that rabbit hole went, the more my skill went, the more my history. I tapped into these resources that I had, and I just kept running into these bigger and bigger resources, both inside the SCA and outside. And then I just kind of had to learn to blend it because there's no other magicians in the kingdom as far as I could find.
Right.
That was it. So I had modern day folks telling me one thing, and then, how to increase my performance. And then I had to figure out how the SCA fit into that. And then took a bunch of different approaches to it. I kind of had to figure out my own path on how to pull this off, and it's still a fat path I'm figuring out. Now I've run into multiple magicians. I know at least 3 Laurels. I'm friends with at least one of them. I'm friends with the very first Laurel in all of the SCA and Magic. He predates everybody by quite a bit. They don't realize it. His Master Pain, he doesn't play anymore, but he's up in the Seattle area. If he's watching, big shout out to him. He's the main reason I'm doing this. So yeah, I just kind of went through and figured out my own path, and just kept finding new rabbit holes every time I thought. In fact, I taught my penultimate class. This was it. Everything I know. And as soon as I was done, I realized there was 2 more books that I didn't own yet.
Right.
That were written in period that I needed to research. And so every time I think, oh, that's everything there is, that's not. And it's fun. I love it. So
it's really interesting to look at, because so as a gaming person, right, I've run into Magic stuff occasionally in historical gaming, because it's the 2 are very tied in because of the props that were used.
Oh yeah.
When you're doing any research in the cards, you see Magic. Any research in dice, you see Magic. So it's definitely historical.
The thing with that is because cheating, so Magic with cards was just considered advanced gaming. It wasn't against the rules. You just were better than everybody else.
Yeah. Card mechanics is a thing, man. And, that's why. So and I'm, again, not a magician. I have 0 sleight of hand. I have 0 dexterity. I understand the principles, but I can't do it. So I don't even try to cheat at cards. Don't bother. But it's really interesting looking at, because like I said, I think it's something that's historical based, but you don't see a lot of it. And I wonder why we don't see more of it, or why I haven't seen more of it. Because I know when I first heard about Magic in the SCA, or in like medieval settings, it was at Ren fairs. You see a lot of magicians at Ren fairs doing, I've seen in things like the sword swallowing and sort of the freak show style acts, right? Which is still Magic, still a category of Magic. and I've seen the poi spinners and the jugglers and all that. You see a lot of that at Ren fairs, but you don't see a lot of it at SCA events, either as a Laurel, as like an artisan thing, or even as a performance thing. And it was surprised when I realized that. I was like, why don't you see more of that? So what are your thoughts on why don't we see more of it?
I feel that is an artifact of the SCA.
Okay.
It's one of the SCA's fault, but it's also because magicians coming in, it's not something everybody's doing. If I want to be an embroiderer, I can throw a rock and hit 5 embroiderers and have everybody telling me how to do it right. So it's a little intimidating as a new person, and I can tell you this is still an issue, and I'm, as far as I am, and I've still got so much farther to go, that people are looking at it like, well, is that really historically accurate? And there's some things to that, because, you know, we're trying to reportray the SCA as historical as we can possibly do. So magicians were kind of secret keepers. There's not a ton out there. Believe me, there's way more than you think, though. It's kind of crazy. The deeper you get into it, the more it gets crazy. But so people are like, well, is that really period? Well, the best advice I ever got was, who knows other than you? If I do a trick, who's going to tell me that it's not historically accurate? If I have the correct looking props, it's like, oh, that's a rope. Yep, that looks right. Oh, look, it's some very medieval looking cards. Okay, I know they had cards back then.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was one of those things. This is my big suggestion for the magicians out there, is there's different tracks. If I am in an arts and sciences competition, I'm using as period accurate cards as I can get. I'm getting my script as period accurate as possible. The moves are all coming out of the books that I have. So I know everything is as accurate as I can. And you can do some amazing things. As they always say in magic, if you want to learn new magic, read old books. Well, I read the oldest books. And then I have the stuff that's just to entertain people. Does the prop look right? Does the script sound right? Is it plausible? Method? Oh man, I got some super modern methods that I've used, blown people's minds. And they're like, well, I can't believe they did that in the medieval times. And I just smile and nod. Nobody knows but me, but I added to the aesthetic.
Right.
That's all that matters. Did you add to the aesthetic? And then if you really want to get into the super historical stuff, do it and have a blast with it. But if you don't sweat, because I'm not going to tell anybody.
That's true. I think it's part of the magician's code, right? You don't talk about it, so it's easy. So I actually run into a lot of the same ideas with gaming, right? So a lot of the stuff we see about historical games is, here's how they could have played this game, but we're basing that off of like one poem about it and a couple paintings. After that, it's guesswork, right? So we go, okay, yeah, they had these pieces, they had these boards. We found the pieces in the board, so we know those were accurate. Past that, we're guessing on rules, and we're sort of going, okay, we know they played backgammon, and this game looks similar to backgammon, so we play it similar to that game with some differences based on the board. The same thing applies to Magic. Okay, well, here's the things we know about it. Here's the pieces they had. Make it work from those two pieces of information, and I think that's as plausible as we can get. But you're right, and so I want to talk about something you said earlier, and I mentioned this on my interview with Crown Between Two Roads the other day. The SCA is supposed to be fun, right? And that's the thing. So I think you're doing a thing that you enjoy, and making the SCA better because of it, because you're enjoying it, and others enjoy it. You enjoying it, therefore it's improving the SCA. Is it 100% accurate? Maybe not, but it fits the motif. It fits the idea of the SCA. I think that's important to do, and it's something a lot of people have forgotten. So that's a great piece of advice you gave, sort of inadvertently there, is enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I like that there's flexibility. It's like, somebody wants to be the 100% accurate magician. I'm not going to do anything that can't be proven. Well, there's over 500 magic tricks that I'm aware of in period. Different distinct magic tricks. So yeah, you can do full on, professional shows. And a lot of this stuff is stuff that, you go turn on Penn and Teller, and hey, guess what? That guy just used that move that was written about in 1584 by Reginald Scott. I can pinpoint accurate, tell you right when and where that was, maybe not when it was invented, but when we wrote it down.
Right.
So,
which are two very different time frames potentially. That's hundreds of years difference maybe, or even thousands. Which is, and we see a lot of oral history. So magic being an oral history largely,
Yep.
Passed on from student to teacher, or teacher to student rather.
Cups and Balls, which is my signature piece. I love Cups and Balls. It's the second oldest magic trick we know of, but it wasn't actually written about the actual exact description of how to pull it off until 1634.
Right. So
but we know how it was done.
Right.
All they have to do is they wrote out this, Seneca the Younger wrote out this description of what was going on. And as a magician, you're like, okay, I know what's going on behind the scene. There's only so many ways you can pull that off. And which technique they use, maybe we're not 100%, but we know what they were doing.
Well, and it probably would have varied between magicians too, how they did it, because one magician saw another magician do it, went, "Oh, I can do that," and did it differently, but with the same result, the same look.
Oh, yeah, my whole Cups and Ball routine is based off of 3 other magicians. But I watched what they did and went, I like this and I like that, and that's more me, and now it's mine.
Yeah, there you go. Do you do it with clear cups though? Because that's the.
I'm working on that.
Are you?
I actually bought a set. They're called Pure Cups. I've actually bought a set. I probably will never show up at an SCA event, but I actually bought a set and I've been working on them.
That is, like, in my opinion, the ultimate badass move of magic. If you can pull cups and balls with clear cups, you win. You have won magic.
Looking good so far. It's probably got another year of work though.
That's a thing. And so, with magic, you almost can't practice in public. Like, there's a lot of stuff, like, you're like, here's a thing I did, I'm not great at it yet, but here's a song I wrote, it's not perfect, but it's getting better, right? With magic, you have to practice it for a period of time, and I won't even justify how long a time it is behind the scenes before it's even ready to be seen in public, and even then it's probably not 100% yet.
I tell people the minimum that I've ever seen, and this has got to be somebody that's supremely skilled, is for every minute of performance you see, that's 10 hours of practice. That's the absolute minimum.
Right.
And that's if you already know all the moves. So, yeah. And then, yeah, you're right. You can't, until it's done, you can't trot it out. Before I show anybody, my wife gets to see it a couple of times. And then I have some other magician friends. So they've all got to watch it and be like, nope, you're flashing. I'm sorry. You got to do it again.
Right.
So take it back to, and then sometimes that means you're not going to do it at all. It's something you can't overcome easily.
So speaking of that from an artisan perspective, so one of the things that I've always hear preached is showing your progress, right? Showing your progress in an art. So when you start sewing, you sew the crappy one and you show the crappy one, and then you sew the better one and you show the better one. You can't really do that with your art. So how did you, I guess, overcome that, or how do you work on that throughout and sort of display those progressions?
So it's kind of funny because the stuff that people see that is the most impressive, a lot of times is easiest stuff to do. And you can't go, oh, you got to understand how technically difficult this is. No, just because I'm doing knuckle busting moves, nobody cares but me or other magicians, because we like to pat each other on the back and be like, good, because we know how tough it is.
Right.
So it's through the performance of it. It's getting better at, in fact, the Kingdom Bard got pointed out that, hey, you finally won that because you shut up. Because my scripts weren't all that great. My scripts are getting better, but I found the perfect piece of music and I found a really good flow to it. And so that was like, and that was a step up. It's like, you're no longer using words to cover up movements. Now all we have is the movements to watch. That's it.
Right.
But then my very next piece I do has got to have some words to it, because now I've already done the just pure music piece. And so the one I'm working on now is going to have wording to it. And then the one after that's probably going to be back to music again. And it's just taking your aesthetics up every time you do it.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're not just
working on moves.
Right. So the fundamental pieces are already there. You're altering their performance side of it. Yeah, and that's sort of been
working on new moves too.
Sure.
But that's not something I can go and say, oh yeah, check out this cool move I learned.
Right.
Nobody wants to see that.
Have you ever, like, from an ANS perspective, have you ever documented those, like instead of documenting the performance, document the moves itself as part of a project? So talk a little about that, if you will.
So my the arts and sciences, when I write about it, my documentation is really unique, because I I talk about the moves without telling you what the moves are, and it's a really little fine line. And I indicate in there that you have, if you want to know the move, you need to come talk to me and we can talk about it. Mostly because I explain why you don't actually want to know,
right?
Because you'd be very disappointed. Once you know how it's done, it's dumb. You don't want to know, trust me. If I could go back and not be a magician, I would, because then I would appreciate the magic stuff better. But it's too late, so I'm jumping down that rabbit hole. So that's the best I can do, is to kind of describe what's going on, the history behind a move, without ever telling them what it really is. And then one of my things that I used was, nobody knew how to judge a magic show or a magic trick. They didn't know what to do. So at the very end, I gave judging criteria. This is what you're looking for. And I based it off of the FISM, the International Olympics of Magic. I just took their judging sheet, broke it down for a layman, and so every time I was in a magic competition or an arts and sciences competition, I was being judged by Olympic standards. Figure if I can do that, then I'll be all right.
Yeah, that's a way to do it, I guess. That would be interesting. I would be curious to see how other ANS communities who've never judged magic like that, because like Meridia's, I know, doesn't have a magic category, and the standard like bardic rubric wouldn't be accurate, wouldn't be appropriate, I don't think. I mean, unless you judge it strictly as performance.
It does okay. Yeah, that's what I've done. My arts and sciences has either been a research paper or as a performance piece.
Right.
And then usually with those, I give a little explanation of the history of it, but I leave most of that into the documentation and let them read it themselves. So,
right.
But that's one thing I've always said, is people go, "Oh, yeah, I didn't know what to look for," and I'm like, "Look, this is what you're watching for. This is how magicians judge other magicians."
Right. I think that's an important thing that I've seen in SCA stuff that I've had to do a bit with gaming, because there's very few gaming people around, is, I guess, teaching the judges what to judge. And that's part of what I think the documentation can do, is use your documentation to tell them what you're doing and tell them what to look for, right? Give them, here's what you should be judging me on. And then especially if it's thinking like this, it's performance-based, where like gaming is not necessarily performance-based, but I'm still sort of telling them what the thing is. And that's one of the goals I was told early on was make sure your judges know what it is you're doing, what the thing is, and their documentation should show that. So even if they have no clue about the topic, whether it's a sewing thing or a gaming thing or a Roman construction thing, they should know by your documentation that you know what it is, and they have at least a basic understanding of it. So I think that's a good way to do that. Runa from Meridia's building rubrics and things and teaching. There you go. So she as a teacher agrees with your approach, sir. Also, I've got to scroll back because Patronus said something that I'm like, apparently the mid realm has a wizard. I want a wizard. How do I get a wizard? That's amazing. I assume there's somebody else who does magic that styles himself as a wizard, and that's hilarious, and I love it.
Oh, you didn't get to see a lot of it. My whole shtick is I've got a book that I bring with me, and that was the magic handed down from Merlin.
Oh, got it.
And talking about the historical, what they would be thinking about in the 16th century, 15th century, talking about Merlin and whatnot. That no, Merlin really was, and he knew this stuff. This isn't magic like you're thinking, but Merlin was a wizard like I am, and he was using these techniques to educate and fool young Arthur.
I mean, sure, that works. That's a story. I like that. And frankly, like I said, we look back at any magicians, in history, you could probably have that same argument of this person was just a magician, not a wizard per se. Like magician, what we call it today. Little.
They mixed it in the truth seers and the court wizards. They mixed that up. Anytime I start reading their descriptions, I'm like, oh, they were just cold reading the crap out of everybody.
Right.
Come on. If they're using mentalism tricks left and right, and then just, yeah. So, I mean, people who do card magic and coin magic and physical things, that's one kind of magic, right? And that's impressive in itself. Again, I can't do it. The mentalism of magic and the storytelling and a lot of the performance, I guess, of that
changes the dynamic a lot, because you can do a lot with a little bit of knowledge of people. Makes your performance significantly different if you know your crowd, right, and know how to play off of them and read them.
One of my favorite pieces that I got this is my Shire Bard cloak that I'm sitting on. The piece that I won that with was a Viking morality tale, using a merchant that was trying to appease the gods, and he had been lost at sea, and he had run out of water. And so I had a vase that I poured water out of, and then it kept refilling itself because it was a morality tale, and he kept giving them offerings, and they kept giving him water, and eventually he didn't realize he was one behind and didn't have enough, so they quit giving him water, and so now the vase is really empty. Pour it, didn't, no pour, and then he dies of thirst. And as they see his ship sailing by, so they swim out to go find out what's going on, and he's dead, but there's plenty of water, and I start pouring again, and people are like, what? So it's this whole morality tale around this trick from 3000 BCE.
Right. Well, it's about reskin. I mean, so you took a trick that from that's that old, and you reskinned it to the Norse times because that was appropriate for your audience. I think that's a killer way to do that. And it's probably, again, what they would have done, it's historical, right? If the Norse had done magic that way, that's how they would have done it. They would have reskinned it for their time period, for their people, because you have to know your audience.
Yeah, it's fun that's one of my favorite things about it. Like, I didn't do it at this Harvest War, but most Harvest Wars, I'll actually set up a table on Merchant's Row, and I'll start conning people. I'll run con games. To get them started, I'll let them borrow my coins, and by the time they realize what a bad idea this is, they've run out of all of my coins. And of course, they're not going to give me their coins. So I scam them out of my own coins. But
that's at least ethical of you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you being ethical about your con games, though. That's good. So I'll ask this as a super negative question. What is your worst experience with Magic? And then what's your worst experience with Magic in the SCA? And are they different?
Actually, the one that still kind of sticks is an SCA one. It was my Kingdom Bard stepping down performance. You're always allowed to do one final performance as Kingdom Bard. And I had found the perfect cups and balls as my jam. But since I won Kingdom Bard without speaking, I was going to step down without speaking. And so I found this perfect, beautiful piece of music to do it to. Of course, I didn't have time to train musicians to do it. So I grabbed some speakers, I tossed them behind a cloak, used my phone, hit play, but as I was trying to get this set up in the way, there was somebody right on the front row that quite loudly goes, well, that's not very accurate. To this day, it sticks. I don't even, I know what the person looks like. I don't know who they are.
Right.
But it was, supposed to be this awesome, because I can, other than the stuff that just recently happened, the Kingdom Bard thing was, almost as first as when I got into doing Magic in the SCA. I went right in and aimed for Kingdom Bard. I think it was less than a year after I started doing the Magic in SCA. I did a Kingdom Bard performance. It was horrendous but I had a blast doing it. It was funny because some Albion got up and started singing before I'd performed, and I thought, oh, I just lost, which meant I had a great performance because there was no pressure anymore.
Right.
Compared to what I do now, it wasn't great stuff, but it was pretty good. People still speak fondly of it. So yeah, it was this Kingdom Bard was like this huge thing that, for whatever reason in my brain, I was never going to get. And then I pulled it off somehow. And then now it's coming to an end. And it just, luckily I got it out of my brain long enough to get the performance done, but it just crushed me.
Right.
So I was, ready to quit Magic at that point. I wasn't quite, but I was.
Just throw it all away. Just done with it. Yeah.
It was so upsetting. I don't know. I didn't understand why. I'm like, really? Can we go through your outfit and make sure everything is 100%, Yeah.
And that's it. So I see that a lot in the artisan community, and especially when you start getting into like judging things, that people will and I'm going to say people, so it's a vague term because I've seen random people, whether it's the people judging or people viewing it as audience members or whatever, is they end up judging a thing that's not the performance. So that in this case, that music was not part of your actual like performance. It was nothing you did. You're not a musician. You're not that part. Like, and yeah, you don't have time to train 30 an orchestra to come back you up. That's not, and it would be impractical, frankly. So the fact that you did that and we're doing the performance and the thing that had nothing to do with you is what ruined it is terrible. And it's because somebody judged you on a thing that wasn't you. I see that a lot. People judging either a fabric choice or a thing that's like, here, I'm showing construction, not necessarily the fabric. Like there's a different piece of that. So when I'm doing gaming stuff, I have a lot where like I do gaming with non-period materials because I'm focusing on the rules and mechanics, not the game, because I'm not a crafter necessarily. I do things occasionally, but like I'm not going to spend time researching the board and the pieces. I know what the board look like. I know what the pieces look like. I know what generally I need. I need, 2 different color pieces of some shape. Doesn't matter. So yeah, I use laser cut boards with little glass river pebbles because that's what's easy for me to get a hold of when I'm teaching the games.
Yeah,
it's not accurate, but it's what I've got. And I won't say I haven't heard that similar things from people about that, right? Because they're judging the wrong part of it. Matter of fact, one of my very first, as my second A&S entry about gaming, some of my judges were asking those questions. I was like, hold on, we're judging the paper I've written about this, not necessarily because like I set up a display of the various games with the paper because like I didn't want to just throw paper on the table because that just seemed lame to me.
It looks like,
just. Hey, here's a folder. It's what you get. I want to I put a thing up for the populace to come interact with me, so I could sort of teach games and talk about them while we were standing. Because we do usually we'll stand with our displays for some period of time, and that was important to have something on the table to sort of play around with, instead of just the paper sitting there. So, but of course that same thing came up, and I was like, okay, you're the problem now, not me.
That's why I always tell the new magicians that are starting out, I'm like, don't listen to them. I'm like, do what you got to do to get the performance over, and then I can show you where to get the materials to make it look a little bit better if that's what you're aiming for.
Right.
But yeah, like I said, there's, nobody in the kingdom that's going to be coming out. That was the one thing. Anything that I do magic wise, people will go, oh yeah, that must be accurate if Aslak's doing it, which has been that way for a little while, which is bizarre to me, but
but when you're the professional in the room, it's easy to be the professional in the room, right? You're the one guy.
So, yeah, and then magicians, we'll talk about it behind the scenes and be like, yeah, I'm using this because of this reason instead of what they actually, because I mean, some of this stuff, the trick used mercury. I'm not going to handle mercury. Come on. And I mean, they were doing it with their bare hands. I'm like, no, but I can do that trick if I use modern materials that they have no idea. So
right. Well, I think that's a reasonable substitution, right? Talking about that and a lot of like the dyeing things. Like I'm not going to use mercury as an example for this craft because it's super toxic, but I can use this other thing that does the same result and is not going to kill me. I think that's important.
Exactly.
There's a good question from Her Lady Shabruna. If you're going to do a starter pack of tricks, what are your 3 like starting tricks to learn?
So I always like to get new people started on cups and balls. The reason is because it's got so many different things that can be used in so many different ways. It's got vanishes, it's got transpositions, and then performance. So it's really kind of teaching everything you need to know as a magician in one little shot. In fact, I maintain, I think I've got like 3 loaner sets. Just, and if they disappeared, it wouldn't break my heart. Right. Usually what I do is I get my loaner set back once they can show me that they're doing it right. And then I buy them a better upgraded set for their own. Because my loaner sets are plastic, but they're this nice heavy plastic, works really well, but you're not going to worry about. So cups and balls is kind of my go-to when I'm trying to help a new person. Other than that, it just kind of depends. I kind of go at people when I have somebody come up to me, I kind of go at them at the level they want to. Some people just want to learn card stuff. There's a great book, Mark Wilson's Complete Encyclopedia Magic. That's one I throw at everybody that starts thinking they want to do magic, you can do a full professional show out of that book. In fact, there's professionals that went their whole career, every trick in their professional show was out of that book and did beautiful careers. So that's what my big one is. I can't really get into specifics of what 3 tricks I would.
Right. Well, that's why, that's why I reframed it to tricks versus like cups and balls. Everybody knows that as a trick, or like
is a good one.
Or like a coin vanish. So Kuji taught us the coin vanish the other day, where and I was like, that's clever. I saw it, knew what he was doing with it. I was like, okay.
Which is great. The cups and balls actually uses those coin vanishes for a ball vanish. You can use that ball vanish for a coin or any other little small object that somebody. In fact, one of the things I do a lot is kids will, come up and be talking about magic, and whatever they've got in their hand, I'll ask to see it, and then I'll hand it back and it's gone. And they're like, and I can go for 10 minutes with a bunch of kids trying to figure out where the heck this item went.
Right.
And, and then it's funny because the adults get in on it and they think they know what's going on. And by the time they think they know what's going on, I've switched methods entirely. And they're like, okay, never mind. My favorite story was just a simple vanish. And a friend of mine told me that would not work on an adult because I did it with kids. I'm like, all right, you sit there and you watch. I brought 3 adults in and it was doing this vanish. And there was a little girl, which her angle, she could see what was going on. And I knew she could see it because very angle specific. I was aiming for the adults. Got done. The adults walked away shaking their heads like, I have no idea. And he's like, okay, I'm wrong. The little girl goes, I know what happened to the rabbit. I go, well, don't tell them. I won't. Adults are stupid.
I mean, she's not wrong. But yeah, that's a thing too. Yeah, I think magic is very angular specific sometimes. So I'll tell my worst magician story because I have done magic in my past. I was doing a elementary school performance. It was like like a talent show sort of thing, and I had originally done it on camera. We via early Zoom days, and I was doing a vanish under a hat. Put the thing under the hat and make it vanish. The method I used was great when it was from the front and on camera. When I then performed it later on a stage in front of an audience, it did not work quite as well. And I'll let you infer what the problem with that was. But yeah, angles matter when you're doing magic, folks. It doesn't work out real well. But yeah, that's humorous. I just cringe thinking about that day. I don't like it. Don't like it at all.
The thing is, I don't get too. I mean, if it's my main audience, I've got them on the right angles, and somebody comes up behind and can see something, I really don't worry about it because most of the time they don't know what they're looking at. They're not part of the performance, so they're not like, "Oh, I know what he did." They're kind of like, "What's why is that thing behind his back? I don't understand." They're not part of it, so they really aren't. Accidentally tipping gaffes happens. You eventually just kind of go and keep going. Yeah. Why you learn multiple methods and then they go, oh, I know how you did it. You're like, oh, okay.
I'll do it differently next time. Thanks. Yeah.
Though usually I try not to get too much into that, I'm smarter than you thing, because that's not really what it's about. It's more about, I want to get them to release their mind and be somewhere else. And that's my whole performances in the SCA is I don't want you in the modern world anymore. I want you in medieval times with me, where I'm a market, my main shtick is I'm a market magician. I'm here for, what they would be doing for tips and trying to, generate crowds so my family can pickpocket them. Or legitimately sell them wares. Right.
Okay, so you focus more on the street magic, the smaller street magic versus like large stage magic stuff.
Yeah, my parlor stuff is the biggest stuff I do, which is what I'm known in the kingdom for. The funny thing is close-ups actually my specialty.
Right.
I am much more devastating one-on-one or tiny small groups than I am with the big performances they see at Kingdom Bard. But how can you do a Kingdom Bard performance for the populace when I can have 4 people surrounding my table when I do it?
Right. Yeah, there's a balance there, I guess. It's hard to do the close-up magic for a giant audience, and it's hard to do giant audience stuff for 4 people. You got to find the halfway point there.
So, yep.
So, all right, so I got a question, and then we've got a request. So we'll get into that. So, what can you safely infer is true about a person based on their favorite magician?
That they like magic. So
Perfect
that's the
answer.
thing. I'll address this head on. This is something that's talked about in magic circles. And you'll hear a magician go, well, I don't like so and so because of blah blah blah. They use camera tricks or they use blah blah. I'm like, are you the one making $3 million a show? I mean, if you are, then maybe you're the one that can get to dress that person down. But
Right.
why? Are they entertaining people? Are people enjoying it? There's magicians that aren't my cup of tea, but you'll never hear me badmouth one of them.
Right.
Ever. I can have like somebody that is like the worst magician ever, and when I get home, I'll complain about them day not, in my house and outside. Oh yeah, I saw their show. That was awesome, excellent, great. Never badmouth them. It only brings you down.
Right.
Why do it?
That's that's a good mentality about artists in general, though.
The other thing I can infer by a person of what their favorite magician is, I can usually tell you what kind of magic they like. So if they go, I like so and so, I'll be like, I know a trick that you'd like. I can emulate, bring in that person's type of thing. And I always love hearing what people's favorite magician is because, somebody says Penn and Teller. I'm like, oh, they like that silly stuff. They want me to be, I'm going to be a goofball. I'm going to have some fun. I'm not going to take myself serious. I like Lance Burton. They want elegant, they want sophistication, but friendly.
Right.
So
that's one thing. That's what I enjoy about Penn and Teller's Fool Us show that they do. Is you get a good variety, but then you also get to see some of the comedy stuff that they do. And because I prefer comedy magicians in general. Like I enjoy watching a lot of the more elegant stuff from a technical perspective, but I don't enjoy watching it because it's not the thing that appeals to me. The comedy magicians are what do. But I would never badmouth them necessarily. I'm not a fan of that thing from a performance perspective because it's not my performance style.
Magicians do it all the time, and I'm just like, why? What? Really? What are you going to gain because you don't like so and so?
Right.
It wasn't your style of magic.
Sure. All right, and we've got other requests from the Black Duke of the Outlands.
Uh-oh.
Show us the goods. See some magic, Aslak. I figured you had something sitting around you could do for us. So here, let me. I'll spotlight you. Let's see what you got.
Cal, I'm going to actually need your help on this.
Okay.
So everybody else can participate on their own too. You might need a little piece of paper or a calculator or something. We're doing a little tiny bit of math. Very, very little.
I have a calculator.
All right, but we're going to talk story. So, Cal, you have arrived at Penzic. You're all set up, and you decide you're going to go out, do a little bit of shopping. Find yourself at the end of Merchant's Row. So you pull out your pouch, and you look in, and you see you've got maybe 1 or 2 or 3 bills in your pouch already. Now, I don't know what those bills are. Only you do. So decide how much money you have. Don't tell me. Nobody needs to know. How much money do you have with you?
Okay.
Let me know when. So now you start working your way down Merchant's Row. You can smell somebody's cooking. Ooh, barbecue. You're going to probably have to hunt that camp down later. You can hear the anvils. They're doing a live demo. You can hear some of the wares being hawked as you wander through. And you wander into a little tent and think, maybe there's something nice here. Looking around, you see, something that would be really nice. I think that'd make a nice gift. I don't know what this item is. Only you do. You pick it up, feel the weight in your hands, the texture. And then you ask how much it is, and they tell you. And it's a little bit more than what you have. But that's okay. You can go back and get some more money. So you set it down and step back out of the tent. And then a couple steps later, you run into your best friend standing there. You chat for a moment, and then you tell them about this item that you saw that thought, that'd make a nice little gift. And they say, but I'm going to go back to my tent. I didn't quite have enough money. And they say, oh, well, I have a little bit you can borrow. And they hand you some money as well. And they've doubled how much money you started with.
Okay.
So now you turn around, head back in, and just as you're walking in, you see somebody walk out with that item. That's okay. It wasn't the perfect thing. It was just really nice. And so you wander a little longer and decide to head back to camp. Well, you get back to camp and there's an envelope on your tent. And you open it up and it's a gift from Aslak the Awful. It's $10. So now you have $10 more. You think, I want to try and find a gift for this person. So you head back into Merchant's Row with the money you had plus the $10 now. You wander into another tent. And you're thinking, maybe this one has something. And you find another item, and it is the perfect gift. You can't believe you just spotted this. You walk over, you pick it up, you feel the item in your hands. Yes, this is perfect. You walk up and you ask how much it is. They tell you it's exactly half the money you currently have. Perfect. So you give them half the money. So now you only have half of it. You step out of the shop and you see your best friend standing just a few feet away talking to somebody else. That's a perfect opportunity. You didn't need the money that they had. So now you can go over, give them back the original money that they gave you. So now subtract the original that they had loaned you off of your number. And now you can go back with your perfect gift to your tent, and you have a little bit of money left with you. Now, I don't know how much money you started with, or how much money you spent, or how much money your friend gave you, but how much money do you have left?
I have $5 remaining. I was tracking it in the chat, so it's now in the comments, sir. Oh. Well done, sir. Well done. I love math mentalism. It's my favorite. I like it. Well done. There you go. Thank you for that. I appreciate you, the impromptu performance. I figured you'd have something ready for me. You can't invite a magician on a show without having something prepared for them.
One of my teachers is Jeff McBride, and his philosophy is magician 24/7. You can't say you're a magician if you don't have magic on you and ready to perform.
There you go.
So I have a little wallet that sits in my pocket, and this has got 3 different things in it that I can just pull out, and depends on the situation. Something for smaller kids, something more for adults.
Right.
And then this one, which is a little longer piece.
Well, it also worked out better on camera, I'm sure, too. It's harder to do things sitting down on camera versus standing up in a crowd, things as well. And when I was taking the class with Kuji the other day, trying to do some of the stuff he was teaching us sitting at my desk was difficult. I realized, okay, I'm in my own way here. Like, I need to get up and go over here to do the things because, like, I cannot do the moves he was trying to teach us. So I can see how that would be difficult as well. Well, there you go. You've entertained the Black Duke.
You're welcome.
And Your Grace, you're welcome. I'm happy you like the way I say your name. But he is although I did not say it correctly, let me correct myself. He is the Black Duke. Because that's an important part of his name. Anybody who knows the Outlands knows the joke. It's an old thing. So I feel like even from Meridia's, I feel like I'm part of the Outland because of the shows I did with them, and His Grace was a part of a lot of that. So, all right, I think we have time for one more question. We just had it come in from there. There you go. So, what venues do you think are appropriate for performance in the SCA? So, this is actually a good one. So, when you perform, where are your performances at?
So anytime they say the word bardic, I show up. You have to adapt a little bit depending, because like firelight stuff is very difficult.
Right.
Usually I'll bring out rope stuff for that point because it can be seen really well. The rope picks up the light really well. Anytime we do pre-court shows. I mean, we have Mistress Casimira that starts our pre-court show. I usually have something just in case she spots me in the crowd, because it's,
because she does. And by the way, that's something that I want to commend Artemesia on. The pre-court shows was amazing. That is something I think y'all do really well, actually. So kudos to you and the kingdom on those sorts of things. So
yeah, well, people are just sitting waiting for court. Like I said, I get Merchant's Row. I'll just set up my own table and start doing stuff. And then I always have 2 pouches on me. And one of those pouches is basically chock full of magic. So if I see somebody, especially kids looking bored, then I'll go hit them with a sponge ball magic and, get the kids all revitalized and off terrorizing everything like they're supposed to be. So it just kind of depends. Depends on what kind of a magician you are.
Right.
But I almost always have, like I said, I get ready for court. And I'll have a bag with me that has something in it. Usually a parlor piece, and then I always have and then like I said, you saw the little tokens that I do. I started a thing that was I called it based off of the Magician 24/7. It's Bard 24/7, where you have a token that you wear that if you're wearing it, it means you're ready to perform.
Right.
And it was meant to be at an event, things are kind of at a lull. You see somebody with that and you say, hey, I see you're wearing the Bard token. Would you grace us with a performance? It just brings more life to the event, more energy.
Right.
So
it's about the ambiance, and that's something again to commend Artemesia that when I noticed when I was there is there was a lot of just ambient things going on. There's a lot of stuff at the event, and like I said, and kudos to you and your event staff for whatever part you played in that, or that may just be part of your culture. And that's something I think that helps out is having people like that are bards or performers or just sort of creating that medieval atmosphere helps break that mindset. I think that's super cool to see. It helps us remember that we're role-playing medieval people, not hanging out talking about IT work or talking about our desk jobs. I think it's really easy to get back into that because Monday's coming. But if you've got that little bit of extra thing going on, it helps bring you into that medieval mindset. I think that's super cool. And I appreciate you and the other bards that help with that.
Yeah, that's a lot of the culture thing around here. So, I just decided that there needed to be a little bit of an extra. I don't know how well it's taken off, but I wanted that little extra kick of like, look, somebody's wearing that symbol. You can hit them up and if I spot them, I'll do it.
Right.
Every time I spot one, I'll be like, oh, I see you're wearing,
That's a neat idea. So I'll throw the challenge out there. Any bards out there in the world watching, take that up. Let's see that spread because I think that's a brilliant idea to help spread that culture. So there you go.
And it's an excuse. I'm a ham, so in fact I got a special one for myself just because I'm like, no, I'm almost always ready to perform. So I'm a magician.
He's a magician. It's fine.
I try not to like inflict magic on people. That's a problem sometimes where you're just like, like, oh, look, you look like you're not doing anything important. How do I know what you're doing that's important or not? Maybe you need that moment of downtime. And some magicians get that way. And I would, if I didn't be very careful. But man, anybody goes, you saw how quick this came out. You're like, oh, do a magic.
Got it. Yeah.
Jitsek.
Which and that's again, I expected that response from you. So that's why I was waiting for somebody to ask about it so I can throw it on you there. So all right. Yeah. Oh, apparently, so you have a request from Oretha to come to Alaska and do magic in their tavern. So there you go. If you're up near Alaska, you've got a spot.
Yeah, that's the funny thing is I've never been to an Attic Kingdom event. We were talking earlier, and I don't know why it hasn't happened yet, but I need to get out there.
Well, like I said, if you're ever in Meridiers, so I do a lot of gaming stuff, and I would love to have a magic performer, hanging out in the tavern while we do gaming. That would be, I think, a great.
To start chatting because that extension as I'm expanding my magic knowledge is coming into gaming. Because as you know, anything with cards, magic, like doing sleight of hand stuff, was not a cheating. That was advanced gaming.
Right.
So for medieval people, I'm an advanced gamer.
Which it still is today. The casinos just really frown upon it when you beat them. They don't like it. They get really fussy about it.
Yeah.
All right. So let me do a little bit of business here, and then we'll do some wrap up here. All right. Coming up next on Kal-bardr's Corner. Next week, speaking of apparently it's Artemesia week here in Kal-bardr's Corner. I'll be joined for Road to Retention. I'm taking over for Excellency Ramut, who will be busy with I think y'all's Crown List is next weekend, right? So she'll be busy with that. So I'm taking over her show, and I'm going to be hosting Duke Timmer. So if anybody who doesn't know Timmer, he is a hoot. He is one of the what we call the big dukes. He's one of the powerhouse dukes in Artemesia. Super cool guy. I'm looking forward to that conversation. I'm just getting to hang out and talk to Timmer a little bit. Anybody who here from Meridiers that wants to know why I fight Madu now, blame Timmer. That seems to be the thing. Blame Timmer. So tune in for that. That'll be 8 p.m. Central Time here on Kal-bardr's Corner. The following Sunday, back for Coffee with Cal, I'll be joined by a royal visitor, Emperor Ionis Serpentis II, out of the East Kingdom, for Sobriety in the SCA. So this is going to be a really interesting conversation. It's something that His Majesty came to me about. He's part of a small group of people who are completely sober, and it's definitely not an uncommon thing, but it's definitely less common than you notice. So I'm looking forward to see what he has to say about that and where his pitfalls are. I know when I was talking to actually when I was in Artemesia, I ran into Sir Tierlock, who is also a sober person at an SCA event, and I wouldn't have known it if I hadn't asked you about it. I happened to sort of catch him and offering him a drink, and he's like, "Oh no, I don't drink." And I was like, "Whoa, what? Hold on, that's weird." And then I realized, wait, why am I reacting that way? And it's because it is weird. It's an odd thing you don't see a lot of. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to His Majesty coming on for that, and also I get to have a royal visitor. I love having kings and queens on my show, so that's a ton of fun. So tune in for that, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, or Central Daylight Time, excuse me, in 2 weeks. Last but not least, if you want to support us here on KK Productions and everything we do on Kal-bardr's Corner, look us up on Patreon, patreon.com/KK Productions. Search us on Redbubble, KK Productions, or if you are on the TikTok, follow me at Kal-bardr. Do some 30-second game things and other random TikTok trends because I am bored and TikTok is a time sink. So there you go. Aslak, anything coming up you want to promote? Any cool events or things you want to talk about?
You want to see more of my Magic Solstice event, December 11th in Artemesia.
There you go. So if you're in around the Utah area, look up Solstice event. And guys, anybody if you're ever anywhere near Artemesia, go. I loved it. They're great people, great event. It really was a lot of what the SCA is for me. And it may have just been me seeing the Stardust for being out of Kingdom and seeing the new thing, but man, it was definitely a good weekend. So look up that event and look up Artemesia in general and go see them and say hi to His Majesty Sean and Her Majesty Nisa for me while you're out there. So, all right, Aslak, you have been a delight. I appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your knowledge with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
And as always, folks out there watching, I've got an empty cup. What about you, Aslak? Are you empty? There you go. 2 empty cups. Oh, well, almost empty. Now it's empty. So, all right, gang, we appreciate you all out there watching. Tune in next week for Road Your Attention and following it for Coffee with Cal. And, every other week for all the other shows we do. We appreciate you as always. This has been, Aslak and Cal in Kal-bardr's Corner. Have a good day, everybody.